Alright, hey guys, Week 15 breakdown, Will Reichling here, and I'd like to start with the Cowboys-Bills game. I started filming this even before the game was over. I mean, that game was over well into the third quarter, and, Dallas's offense really struggled in this game. The key factor here is, I don't know if there's really much to make of this. I'm not really ready to bail on Dallas just yet. Even before this game, and before the last game when they had a huge win over the Eagles, and even before that, when they were winning, it really came down to if the Dallas Cowboys were going to make noise in the playoffs. That's really what it comes down to. Because they've had many good seasons in the regular season, and at the end of the day, they always somehow choke in the playoffs. So the real key here is, what is Dallas going to do in the playoffs? So I didn't really take much from this game on the Dallas Cowboys side, but as far as the Buffalo Bills side, I think they came ready to play, especially that defense. I mean, they have key injuries to Milano, Trey White, and they still came out to play. They held Dallas, the league's top offense, to under 200 total yards, pretty sure. I mean, it might be different now since I haven't been watching the game now, so it could have been some garbage yards in there. But great job by the Buffalo Bills defense, and that goes for Sean McDermott as well, who coached up this defense. So great job for McDermott, great job for the Bills defense. As far as the offense, the big key for the Buffalo Bills is that James Cook is really becoming the key factor in this Buffalo offense. And I said going to the season they're going to have to develop some kind of run game without Josh Allen, and they have. James Cook is becoming an X factor on this offense, and I'm starting to buy into, if the Bills make the playoffs, watch out. They could make some noise. They're 8-6 now, so they have a good shot at making the playoffs. And they have the best quarterback in the hunt right now. So, I mean, Buffalo, it's looking really good right now. Dallas, I wouldn't freak out. I wouldn't freak out at all, because it's really going to come down to what do you do in the playoffs. And we all know that you can win regular season games. I'm not going to give you guys a big L for this loss, because I don't really think it was that big of a deal. Dak is allowed to have a bad game. This offense is allowed to have a bad game after all the good games that they've had. So I'm not going to give them too much I'm going to give him some grace here, because we gave Mahomes grace when he has bad games. We gave the Bengals some grace early in the season when they've had bad games. And, we give teams grace. We have to be able to give Dallas the same grace that we give other teams. So we can't be so hard on Dallas. I know they're the Dallas Cowboys. I know people hate on them being America's team, quote unquote. But Dallas, I still think they're a top 3 team in the NFC. I still think they're better than Philadelphia, so they're probably a top 2 team. And I think that we just have to wait to see what they do in the playoffs, because really it's going to come down to, like I said, if they can beat the Niners or not. So I think they can beat any other team but the Niners. Buffalo, it seems like they can find a way to get themselves back into the playoffs. I had them being a top 10 team coming into this week. They're definitely a top 10 team now. They showed it. They beat good teams. They almost beat Philadelphia, too. They beat Miami. They beat the Chiefs last week, so I think they're a legitimate team. They're not as good as past years, but I still think they're good enough to make a playoff push. And with all the quarterbacks falling apart in the AFC, it's wide open. So if the Bills make the playoffs, they could make some noise. So I don't think this is their year, but it could. The way things shake out in the next month or two, you never know. You never know. Broncos and Lions on the Saturday night game, and the Lions offense just came out rolling and rolled the entire game. Their run game was just phenomenal. The rookies came to play. Jahmyr Gibbs came to play 2 touchdowns. Sam Laporta, the tight end, came to play 2 touchdowns. Now leads all tight ends in touchdowns. So Sam Laporta is a top 5 tight end right now. And Gibbs is starting to really, really show flashes. I said earlier in the season that he was going to come on later in the season, that Montgomery was going to take a lot of the load early in the season. And as Gibbs comes on and on later in the season, Montgomery will take less of a load. Jahmyr Gibbs will take more of a load, especially pushing into the playoffs. So now we're seeing Gibbs take on more of a load. Even though Montgomery's still very effective, Gibbs is becoming more and more effective every single week. And Jared Goff, 5 touchdown passes. I said he's top 10. Why is he top 10? Because he fits in this offense so well. They have a top 3 line in the league. They have a top 3 running game in the league. And when those two combined play really well, on top of their defense playing well, Goff is going to have a big day. 5 touchdown passes. That's the result of that. The Lions defense definitely stepped up this game. 100%. Well, they only let up 17 points, and they've been getting kind of crapped on recently in recent weeks. They kind of shut down and stifled this Broncos offense. So we got to give Lions credit where it's due on that defensive side. So when all those things are working, yeah, Jared Goff's going to play very well. I don't even think this is necessarily his best season statistically, but he's had a pretty solid season. He's had some tough games in there, but it's going to come down to what he does in the postseason. I think the Lions can win the playoff game. I don't see them going really far. I think they're like one notch right below the San Francisco, Dallas, Philadelphia range. So they're probably the second tier of the NFC. Still, I mean, they got a couple more players on the defensive side. They could really be a feisty team. So they, stick with Jared Goff, obviously. He's a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. So as far as the Broncos, though, Sean Payton, we saw him yelling at Russell Wilson on the sideline. Look, I think they're still okay. I think it took him a little while to gel together, but I think they're good. They've kind of bounced back this season. It was a tough loss. I think they were 7-7 now. But the fact that they're even in the mix, they should be proud of themselves. They were 1-5. They won 6 out of their last 8 games to put themselves back into the mix. So great job for Russ. Great job from Sean Payton. They're gonna get these are two people that are passionate about winning. So you're gonna see things flare like this. And Russ kind of took it like a champ. You see kind of Russ didn't really respond. That's kind of Russ's personality. And Payton's personality is kind of to get a little confrontational. But he's a great head coach. All respect to him. All respect to Russ. And I don't really take too much from that. I mean, tempers were just flaring. They were getting their butts kicked. At the end of the day, I wouldn't really take too much from it. So the Lions, I would just be, if I was a Lions fan, I'd be very happy. You needed a nice bounce back win. You've had a couple of rough losses the last 2-3 weeks where you lost to Green Bay, you lost to Chicago. You almost lost to Chicago another time. The Lions have a good team. We all knew they were going to win the NFC North. And look, I said going to this game that the Lions were going to show why they're the better team. They have the better roster. Right now, Jared Goff's the better quarterback. I think Sean Payton's the better head coach, but Dan Campbell has these guys always fired up. So I took the Lions there, and the Lions came out and showed. As far as the Vikings-Bengals, Jake Browning does it again. He's hitting guys all over the place. Jamar Chase, he had a beautiful throw to. He had some nice throws to Higgins. One, he just threw it up, and Higgins just made a beautiful play at the end of the game. But the Vikings were right there, too. Ty Chandler had a career game. Justin Jefferson came back and was effective. The difference was really Nick Mullins was just turning the ball over way too much. He had a critical red zone interception. He had another one where he was trying to throw it away and just threw it right on top of the lineman, and that was an interception. And then he almost had a third one where he tried to throw a screen, and it was a pick six, but lucky that I got called back on the penalty. Got very lucky there. But at the same time, Jake Browning was making plays all over the field. The last 3 games, his numbers look crazy. Is it possible for him to get a shot as a starter on another team? It's probably very possible. I mean, the guy's playing like poor man's Joe Burrow. I mean, he's doing exactly what Burrow does out there. He just distributes the ball to all of his receivers, and he's making some plays kind of moving out of the pocket. Browning looks like pretty effective in this offense, and I'm starting to see what the Bengals and Zach Taylor saw in this guy and why they made him the backup in the first place. Because he's pretty much running this offense very similar to what Joe Burrow will be doing. And you got enough players on that offense where as far as you play a little, like kind of average, a little bit above average, you're going to be effective in this offense. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, that's arguably the best wide receiver duo in the league. Nick Mullins makes plays down the field, but it seems like he also turns the ball over a lot. Makes a lot of stupid plays. I just don't know. Your defense is definitely playing way better this season than last season. I just don't know if this offense with this quarterback is going to be good enough to make the playoffs. I don't really know why you moved off Josh Dobbs that quick. It was a little weird how that happened. He had some great games for you where he came back and won, and all of a sudden after 2 bad games, he basically a bad game and a half, he got benched. Like, I don't know, you traded for him. I think there's some incentive where if he plays a certain amount of games, he gets paid a certain X amount of dollars. So I think that's what they're trying to. They know that they're not going anywhere with him and that he's not really special or the guy. So I think they're just trying to get that money back by not playing him. But I don't know. I feel like he gives you the best chance to win over Nick Mullins. I feel like he's more mobile. He's obviously smarter, and I feel like he makes more explosive plays down the field. I don't know. I guess they're going to roll Mullins. I mean, they've had him all season, so I guess he knows the playbook better. And O'Connell, I mean, they see things in practice that we don't. So clearly, they see something in Nick Mullins that they don't see in Josh Dobbs. But regardless, this is more of a game about the Bengals still being alive in the wild card. And they are 8-6 now, and they have a very possible shot at making the playoffs. They have a wild card spot as we speak. I think they're the 6th seed right now. I think the Browns are 5 and the Bengals are 6 at 8-6. So they very possible. They control their own destiny right now. If they sneak into the playoffs without Joe Burrow, I mean, Zach Taylor deserves a lot of credit. We kind of roasted the guy before Joe Burrow got there. Basically, he wasn't really impressive at all. Joe Burrow gets there, they get to a Super Bowl and everything. Kind of people said Zach Taylor was kind of carried by Joe Burrow. Zach Taylor's showing us why he's an effective head coach right now. Taking Jake Browning, an unknown guy. No one really knew who this guy was, and I said the Bengals were going to win like 1-2 games max more once Burrow went down. This guy's playing really effective. He's playing a Burrow-like number. So he's showing that as long as you have someone capable in there and you have a good play caller, with those weapons, you could take it pretty far. Flacco's showing it on the Browns right now. Bengals are showing that they could definitely make the playoffs. So are they going to make a run in the playoffs? Obviously not, but they're probably going to be in the mix. And we got the Las Vegas Raiders scoring 63 points on the LA Chargers. Brandon Staley getting fired shortly after that. Same with Tom Telesco. And I didn't really agree with Telesco getting fired. I feel like he put together a pretty decent roster. I feel like Brandon Staley just cannot coach this roster, but at the same time, he hired Brandon Staley. So I get it. You want to keep people on the same cycle, so you fire both the GM and the head coach. You bring in a new GM, he gets his own guy. I understand it completely. Best case scenario, you go out and get Harbaugh, like I said last week. Maybe you make Kellen Moore the head coach after this. I heard they gave it the outside linebackers coach Giff Smith. I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but I've heard rumors that they asked Kellen Moore and he turned it down. I get why. I mean, Easton Stick scored. I mean, it was terrible in this game offensively, so he probably doesn't want to coach this disaster and make a bad name for himself as his first time as a head coach. But the Chargers were terrible in this game. I mean, the Raiders were just running up and down the field, and it really crazy. They had a chance to beat Miami's 70-point game this season. I mean, they had 63 going into the fourth quarter, or a little bit into the fourth quarter. It was pretty crazy. The Las Vegas Raiders under Antonio Pierce, they definitely play hard for this guy. I will say that right now. They play hard. Very hard for this guy, and it just shows. This game really showed the difference in coaching. Brandon Staley, these guys kind of quit on him in a way, and the Las Vegas Raiders, these guys fight for their guy, their head coach. So it showed in here. I mean, the Chargers, the biggest difference really comes down to not having your star quarterback in Justin Herbert. But other than that, it came down to coaching. I mean, Kellen Moore, he's a good offensive coordinator, but what are you going to do with Easton Stick? And the Raiders came fired up. You saw Devontae Adams dancing on the sideline, bopping his head. That just comes from great coaching. The vibes are great in Las Vegas. The vibes are not great in Los Angeles, the Chargers. I mean, the rest of the season is basically a wash for the Chargers. They're going to go into the next season, try to find a legitimate head coach to coach Justin Herbert. I've heard Bill Belichick's name's thrown out there. I've heard Jim Harbaugh's name thrown out there. I've heard Kellen Moore's name thrown out there. So we will see what happens. But at some point, you need to get a good head coach in here for Justin Herbert, and he's got to start winning some games. The season's a wash, and basically for Brandon Staley in this era, the Brandon Staley era, it ended in the most disappointing, embarrassing way possible. Letting up 63 points, you're a defensive head coach, and you let up 63 points. So that's really what it came down to with Brandon Staley. He couldn't even coach his side of the ball well, let alone the whole team. So terrible decision to even hire him in the first place, and I guess that's why they got rid of Telesco. I just want to get into this Jets situation. They got their butts kicked by the Dolphins 30-0. There was rumors that Aaron Rodgers was going to be medically cleared next week, and he's not coming back now. And it wasn't even Zach Wilson's fault this game. I mean, the offensive line was just absolutely terrible. So would we really want Aaron Rodgers coming back as far as Jet fans? Because if Aaron Rodgers comes back with this offensive line, he's going to get his rear end kicked. I mean, he's older, so he's not great at moving out of the pocket anymore, let alone this injury that he's just coming back from. And the way this offensive line played today, he would be getting his rear end kicked. I mean, he would be getting demolished. Just rest, get healthy for next season, because it's over at this point. I mean, the Jets are eliminated. There's no point for Rodgers to come back at this point. And if he does it at this point, I feel like it would be for more of selfish reasons, just to say that he did it. To say, look at me, I'm the quickest player to ever come back from Achilles. That would just give a little bit of typical old Aaron Rodgers to me. And this guy seems like a new version of Aaron Rodgers, which actually cares about his teammates, cares about winning. And if he really cared about his teammates and cared about winning, he would care about his long-term health, which means staying healthy for next season. Because this season's a wash. You're eliminated. No more playoff hopes for Jets fans. They can't skewer it any upside down way, left, right way. They're out. There's no way they can win out and then all the other teams lose out and they win. They're mathematically eliminated. So Rodgers should also be mathematically eliminated from playing this season. So let's see if they hold true to that. I'm sure he will. I think Aaron Rodgers is not going to play this season. Just to get into quickly the 49ers Cardinals. Brock Purdy had 4 touchdown passes when I turned it off. I mean, it could be 5 at this point, but he had another great game. I said Dak was the MVP over Brock Purdy coming into this game because I said Purdy was less valuable on his team than Dak was on his team. And that might be the case, but Brock Purdy's just putting up better numbers than Dak at this point. Purdy's leading in almost every category, and he's beaten more good teams than Dak's beaten. Let's just be honest about that. Purdy beat the Eagles. He beat the Cowboys, beat him straight up. I mean, he had a couple 3-game loss stretch there where he struggled, but he's bounced right back since then. Dallas lost to San Francisco. They lost to the Eagles once, even though they beat them. They lost to the Bills here, So Dallas has had some tough losses here, and I would just think now Brock Purdy has slightly taken the edge on the MVP race. I don't want to keep going back and forth here, but look, it's a week-to-week thing. It's going to come down to the wire here, and now Brock Purdy is the edge. So right now, this week, I put Brock Purdy MVP.